on the National Animal Rights Day.
These are not just animals, they're just like us, sentient living beings. We are animals, they are animals, and we need to respect each other.
That can win is about persistence. Actually, it really is. People like you on days of actions outside Tesco all on the same day, 120 stores, talking to the public about what Hogwood was like and what Hogwood typified, why we were against factory farming. Most of the public were with us. We had another day of action where we specialised in people going in with actual pictures and the footage of Hogwood, talking to the managers and the deputy managers of the store, because they're just people like us. They didn't know what was going on until we went in, and the staff were putting pressure on the headquarters. This is the thing, we have to make connections with each other. Meat eaters are not our enemy, they were us before we changed. We have to bring them on board and help them understand why we're offering solutions. Veganism is not about deprivation, it is actually about joy. It is about finding answers. And it's about people coming on that journey with us. And you have to find connections with people and where they're at and bring them with you. And that is what we did with this campaign. Practically all meat eaters that we talked to came on board and they wanted Hogwood shut down. We worked on a local community level and the villagers got on board. They wanted it shut down too. And the momentum was just building and building. As I said, we had national press completely on our side. And so Tesco finally dropped Hogwood after the final investigation, and Red Tractor dropped them and even went on Radio 4 saying that the conditions were appalling. Fine, but Hogwood was keeping going. But this is the thing, so did our supporters. The vigils continued, the campaign continued, until finally, through dogged persistence, this year the owner of Hogwood admitted that he had never recovered from Viva's campaign. He'd never recovered from people like you. He tried to get other suppliers and failed. They wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. He tried to sell Hogwood 3 times to 3 of the biggest pig companies. They wouldn't touch Hogwood with a barge pole again and again and again, until finally he's been forced to close and finally shut the doors on that shithole because of people like you. And it hasn't happened once. In fact, the person that whistleblowed on Hogwood, who is an ex-staff member, saw our footage about us closing a pig farm before that called Lambrook. And he said, if you think Lambrook's hard, Hogwood is even worse. And then after that, we went to a pig farm called Flathouse. And we closed Flathouse down as well. We had a trading standards investigation and they were taken to court. And so it is possible to close these places down, but it's extremely difficult. And there are campaigns to stop them opening up in the first place. But ultimately, the answer is changing ourselves, isn't it? That is what we've got to do. Said, this is not about infighting and saying, well, I've done more campaigning than you, and I'm a better vegan than you. Forget all that. Just get people on the journey. I call it the road of compassion. Just get people on that road and open their eyes to how veganism is the solution. People are desperately looking around for ways of reducing, mitigating the impact that we've had on the climate, reducing the impact that we've had on wildlife. The biggest driver of wildlife extinctions is animal agriculture. It's making people understand that. It's not about whether a vegan cares more about a pig than an elephant, than a whale, than a gorilla. We have to understand everything is connected and the one depends on the other. There's no point us as vegans protecting farmed animals if there's no environment for them to go back into and for us to protect their wild ancestors who are still living in the forests of Asia in the case of the wild turkeys and the wild chickens, the jungle fowl, in the case of wild boar. Living in magnificent countries with their magnificent wildlife. We have to save it all. Everything is connected, and veganism is the hub. It's the central theme that runs throughout all of these issues. And the reason that the industry tries to marginalise us is because we are the biggest threat that they have. Do not underestimate that. They tried to shut us down with the ultra-processed food argument because we are the biggest threat to them. They know we have right on our side. They know we have truth on our side. But it seemed impossible to shut down any social movement until it happened. It seemed impossible to stop slavery at the time. We were told, in Britain, those campaigners were told that it was economically impossible to stop slavery. People were told it was economically impossible to allow women to have the vote, for God's sake. It's happened again and again and again. These industries seem impossible to stop until they're stopped. And we will do it. We will continue. And we will never, ever stop the fight. Never. And I want to say it, I'm going to keep saying it. Viva is its supporters. We are you. I hope that really comes across. It's not that some magical people in some magical place waving a wand. It is down to you to join with our campaigns. And if you can't join the campaigns, donate to enable us to do the campaigns.
But I am tired. I've traveled all over the country over the last couple months. I've barely gotten any sleep. And most importantly, I'm now facing 4 felony charges, potentially 31 years in prison. I should really be in the United States trying to defend myself, but yet here I am. And the reason is James. So for those who don't know the story of James, James is our little beagle. I brought him to London from the United States, and just 2 months ago, his entire life had been in a cage. He had never stepped outside of that cage. He'd never seen the sunlight. He'd never been touched with kindness. He had never even felt anything soft. And that is a life not just for James, but for thousands of other beagles in the United States. There are 2,000 beagles who the government allows to be stabbed in the heart, bled out, and cut up for their organs, despite the fact that there's a law in the book called the Scientific Procedures Act that says that is illegal unless you can justify it as necessary. And we all know, as a jury knew in Cambridgeshire just a couple months ago, that there is nothing necessary about stabbing beagle puppies in the heart. The beagles from NBR were sold to experimenters who literally forced them to breathe chemical weapons banned under international law. And they drown in a pool of blood that forms in their lungs. This is happening just 2 hours from where we are standing today, and we know, the government knows, it is a crime. And yet, despite the fact that it violates the Scientific Procedures Act, despite the fact that the Home Office itself has noted that there are hundreds of violations of the animal welfare laws in this country every year. Do you know how many prosecutions are on the books in the year 2024? I want to guess, how many prosecutions were there for violations of the Scientific Procedures Act? 0. When animals are being hurt, it is not just a goodness. It is not just a form of activism. It is our duty. It is our duty as human beings on this earth to help them. And that is what we're here to do today. Because this is the future of Earth. This is the future of every sentient being on this planet. And you are the ones bringing that future to life. Thank you very much.
I was walking through my hometown and I saw a sticker on a lamppost. And that sticker showed an image of a dog being restrained, a dog being experimented on, and I couldn't understand why anyone would do something like that. And I had that strong feeling as a child, even though I didn't know the science or the reasons why that dog was being restrained like that, I felt a deep sense of injustice and the need to do something. And so I told my mum I want to go and protest, because just down my road was an animal testing lab in Covents. Unfortunately, beagles are still sent there to that same animal testing lab today, Labcorp in Harrogate. So since I was a 10-year-old child, I went vegan, I started campaigning, and I joined Animal Rising back in 2020. And in 2022, myself and a small group of us decided we need to go and free the beagles. We need to do what no one has done in decades and go to MBR acres, cut through those fences, climb over the barbed wire, or past security, and into those buildings and set some free. So the first rescue in June 2022, we rescued 5 beagle puppies, and in December that year, we rescued another 18 beagle puppies. And that cold December morning, I found myself running across the field with a puppy that I named Love in my arms. And as I ran across that field, he was licking my face, he was wriggling around with excitement. The exact reasons why puppies, like beagles, are used in experiments, because they trust us. But as he wriggled in my arms, I felt 2 people running behind me, shouting for me to stop. And as they approached, they tackled me to the ground and took Love from my arms. So earlier this year, myself and 19 others were in court for charged with burglary for rescuing those puppies. And I want to read to you what I read to the jury in court in March this year. Love, the puppy, as you may recall, is the one I took into my arms at MBR Acres. Minutes later, he was in the back of a police car. As I watched from the back of the adjacent police car, I saw him licking the policewoman's face, climbing on her lap, wagging his tail. Love was returned to MBR days later, and I have thought so many times about the life he almost had. He was so close to safety. He could have come home with me to London, to my husband Wayne and our dog Oliver. He could have had toys, a soft bed, the freedom to run around in the park each morning, just as all dogs deserve. Instead, he went back to being number OM21066, one of many. And I've described 2 lives for Love. One is a concrete cage, a ball on a chain and a needle in the heart, and a serial code for a name. The other is a soft bed, walks in the outdoors, and a family who names him Love. Which of those 2 lives represents who we are as a nation of animal lovers? There is a world that we're trying to build, not a world without rules, but a world that lives up to the values that we already hold. A world where ordinary people, when they see an animal suffering and scared, do not feel compelled to give up or look away. Where the instinct to help, as I felt as a child, is not punished, but celebrated. Where Love's story does not end at 16 weeks in a concrete cage. Love deserved that world, and so do all the ones who came after him. So now it's up to you, members of the jury, to decide whether this was a burglary or a puppy rescue. The jury decided it was a puppy rescue and not a burglary. A similar breeding facility in the United States, Ridgeland, with 100 people, and managed to rescue 22 puppies in March this year, and then went back again, exactly 4 weeks later, announcing exactly what they were going to do. Another 1,500 people sacrificed themselves. They risked prison to try to rescue beagle puppies there. And then shortly after that, Ridgeland signed an agreement releasing 1,500 beagle puppies.
Animal farming as a whole should be illegal. Woo!
Yes.
But when society doesn't really give a shit at the moment, we need to change that. And we've decided that we need to focus on its weak points. So we're going to be running continuous underground campaigns every 2 or 3 months. We're starting with gas chambers, so for the last 6 weeks you will have seen the ads. But we're not stopping at gas chambers. In about another week or so, you'll start seeing the campaign will be Franken chickens, and we'll be running a campaign about broiler chickens for another 8 weeks. And then after that, we move on to the salmon industry. And then maybe dairy, and then maybe the egg industry, and then we might talk about antibiotics. And we're calling these drum beats because the idea is that it's continuous, it's repetitive, and we're going to continue until factory farming is under significant pressure. We need to meet people where they are a little bit more, and because most people already feel comfortable about factory farming, they disagree with it. They might be funding it, but ultimately they do feel uncomfortable about it. I do believe that people can change. I came from a family of butchers. My mum, who's here, put your hand up, Mum. My mum no longer eats meat, and she's here. She's a great support of me, and she's keen to learn about animal rights, and she was crying a little bit at some of the previous talks. So thanks, Mum. Now, some of you might think we're welfareists. We're not. None of our team. We're all focused on ending factory farming, ending all animal abuse. And you might feel that ending factory farming isn't enough, and you're absolutely right, it isn't. We encourage all of you who are advocating for more to continue to do so. For us, we want to reach the masses, break down that social license that the meat industry and factory farming currently has, and move the over to the window. There's 150 million impressions. Most people that are on the underground are seeing our ads over and over again, and not for 8 weeks, but from now onwards. Our social content is also doing well, and our audience is growing. But people are telling us that they're dropping meat, they're going vegan, they're going vegetarian. Over 70 MPs have responded to the emails. There's about 7,000 people have sent an email through our website direct to their MP. And a lot of the MPs are responding and saying, we didn't know about gas chambers, we're going to write to DEFRA, we're going to speak to a minister, we're going to ask the questions. So, obviously we want to end all animal exploitation, but it's a start. We want to create mass cultural pressure that softens the ground so that street activism, which many of you are doing, becomes easier. The idea is we move the culture, and then street activism converts individuals face to face in conversations.
Kidnapped, bred and tortured by one of the most harrowing animal exploitation industries there is, but one that I'm afraid still isn't being spoken about enough. The pet trade. Yes. Snakes are kept in tanks where they're not able to stretch, in pet shops, breeding farms and people's homes. Imagine if puppies were kept like this. Imagine the outrage. Imagine if you were kept in a tank without being able to stretch your legs. Snakes can live for around 40 years. Imagine being in a tank without being able to stretch for 40 years. That is torture to an unimaginable degree, and that is law partly because the pet trade influenced DEFRA to make it so. I wanted to start this speech with this fact about snakes because I think it perfectly sums up just how evil the pet trade is. But so many people view this abysmal industry through rose-tinted glasses. I think lots of us have happy memories of visiting pet shops and looking at the animals and maybe buying a hamster, myself included. But as I got older, I started to feel deeply uncomfortable with the idea of animals being bought and sold. I started to look more deeply into the pet trade, and I still find out things about it that are some of the worst and most disturbing things I've ever heard all the time. Alongside Illy Parwood, I co-founded Rescue Not Retail at the end of 2024, and we aim to raise awareness about the pet trade. We started this campaign because we both separately realised that despite the horrors of the pet trade, not many people in the animal rights space were speaking about it, and we wanted to change that. Pet animals are farmed animals. They are factory farmed animals. The animals that you see in pet shops come from intensive facilities known as breeding mills. They might be kept in rows and rows of severely overcrowded cages, forced to live with untreated wounds and in their own excrement. They'll be bred over and over again until they're killed. The conditions in pet breeding farms are absolutely terrible. They are an abomination, but hardly anybody knows about them. Once the babies are born, they are packed off to the pet shop to be put on display for paying customers. If you go into any pet shop right now, you will see so much suffering in plain sight. You will see hamsters desperately scrabbling at the corner of their cages, trying to follow their instinct to burrow and hide to no avail. You will see fishes in dank, dirty cages, some alive, some dead, some floating in the tank. You will see rabbits sitting still and staring into space completely mentally broken as their instinct to burrow and hide is taken from them. All that animals kept as pets have to look forward to is being bought by a human, often as an impulse purchase and often by someone who is completely ill-equipped to take care of them. Can you imagine how much the hamsters are suffering in their tiny cages that are built to look like children's toys, as they're forced to live there for their 2+ year lifespan? Can you fathom the boredom of pet fishes, as they're forced to spend their lives swimming endlessly in circles? Fishes are every bit as sentient as any other animal, and they experience every moment of its existence. We should of course adopt and rescue animals who have fallen victim to the pet trade, but we have no right to buy any animals and bring more animals into this already desperate situation. There is no excuse to visit a pet shop that sells animals, and there is no such thing as an ethical breeder. We cannot continue to treat female animals as breeding machines, take their babies away, put them on display, and sell them to a human so they can cage them in their homes. When I speak to people about the pet trade, it's often the case that they simply hadn't given it much thought before. If that's you, then I'd urge you to go home today and to do some research into this industry, because these animals desperately deserve our time and attention. Thank you so much for listening to my talk, and I really hope you have pet animals for your activism going forward. Thank you.
Hello, so my name is Zouletta. I'm a mum to 3 beautiful, compassionate boys who are here, hiding from me. Where's Taylor? I can't see him. I became vegan pretty much overnight 10 years ago when someone told me off the cuff that eating animals was bad for human health. Being the keen researcher that I am, I found that not only was that true, but it's in fact even worse for the health of the animal. I came across so much guidance and reports online on how to unalive animals and how to preserve them for consumption. And I got so angry that this was commonplace. It was easy for me to find alternatives straight away, food, products, etc. However, I was a mum to then 2 young boys, and changing their diets seemed to be up for debate from everyone around me. It was easy for me to try and see the world through my children's eyes and live without causing harm. I genuinely thought I was being the most amazing parent. But the pushback I received from those closest to me planted the first seeds of doubt. Maybe I was depriving them for what they needed. I grew up in a British Caribbean household, and animal flesh was always at the centre of our meals. We didn't have pets, and living animals simply were not part of our lives. So when I rocked up telling people that I cared about animals and that I didn't want to cause them harm, it further alienated me from the culture that I grew up in. But I'm a determined person, and this fueled me even more to stick to my morals. I started to notice other areas of injustice that I just never come across before, and I realised I had to teach my children compassion and morals by being true to my compassion and my morals of myself. I had to show them by doing it myself. So this showed up in the books that we read together, in the clothes that we wore, and in the films that we watched. Shout out to B-Movie. And in the conversations we had. As long as my kids were around me, we were true to our morals and it was easy. But of course I can't go to school with them. The school food standards tells them to feed our kids dairy every single day, meat 3 times a week, and fish once a week. It's rigid and it ignores the science that a plant-based diet is the healthiest for all stages of life. Which meant that mistakes were often made and my kids were fed animal flesh. The vegan options were poor and my kids felt left out. They were sad and they started to hate school. They were told they couldn't question the food and it was just a whole thing. I had no one in my corner to help me fight this momentous fight. No one close to me understood why it was important to challenge these rules. Read every product label and carry a packed lunch everywhere we went. My mental health suffered deeply. I fell out with people. I had many, many deep reflections. I knew I needed to find strength and validation, so I joined up with Animal Rising's campaign of plant-based schools and plant-based councils. Suddenly, my world got bigger. I was welcomed into such a wonderful community who were proud to shout about justice for animals.
Animals are stripped of everything that is meaningful to them. Their families, their freedom and their lives. Humans give them no respect or compassion, treat them as nothing more than a commodity and profit. They are shown no mercy. All this cruelty is hidden in plain sight. The zoos and oceanariums, the racetracks, the fur shops, the sacrificial festivals, the meat processing plants, which are really slaughterhouses. You are lied to by big agriculture, politicians and the pharmaceutical industry. You are told that slaughter is humane, that animal testing is necessary, that animals want to perform, that hunting is conservation. You see pictures of happy chickens, baby animals with their mothers. For the majority of animals, this is a lie. You are told that animals don't feel emotion, cannot make connections, that they are here for us to use. They are not our possessions. They are sentient beings. They are here with us, not for us. Once I saw all this, I started activism. Being vegan is not enough. It is the bare minimum. Animals are voiceless and defenseless. They do not have choices. We have to be their voice. We have to stand up for them and we have to be loud.